Peace family. So I'm back with another one. Today what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to my chosen ones about never backtrack, meaning going to your past and hoping and assuming they have changed. Most beings you have outgrown, because that's usually what happens. We never just separate just to separate, unless it's like some kind of weird abusive situation. But outside of that, usually most separations are due to one outgrowing the other one. And what kind of brought me to this subject today was just kind of diving deep on my own past, and my life, and then a couple other people that I know, and just kind of, when you actually take that time travel yourself and you start re-engaging with some of your old past, whether it was 2-3 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the same space that some of us have left some of these beings in, they are in those exact same spaces 3 to 5 to 10 years later to 15 years later, depending on how long your separation has been from those beings. And you have to understand how hard it is to be in a stagnant place for an extremely long time. And I used to use 51st dates all the time when I first started doing this, because it was a really good example of how you can wake up and go through the same routine daily and not expect any higher results, any different resolutions, and no different outcomes. You just kind of cool with just floating through the day. Long as you make it through the day, on the backside of that, we all know that it's certain parts of us and throughout this universe where you have to solely focus on making it through the day, being in the present. But what I'm saying is, clearly we have time and longevity, and we have all these things in place to show that a lot of these beings, they don't shift out of where they are at. If they was disgusting beings when you used to know them, 10 times out of 10, they're still disgusting. Only thing is, they may have put some new makeup or some new clothes on top of that disgusting shit. If you had extremely arrogant, selfish beings back then, 10 times out of 10, they are still in that space and place, And then the ones who aren't, who had just taken on that demonic playbook, when you run into them and engage with them, you'll realize that most of them understand who they are and what's going on inside of them. Most of them understand who they are and what's going on inside of them. So they know all the disgusting things they did. They know all the unloyal, unrespectful, all the no dignity kind of things that they done to you and the people around you and the people around them. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like if you ever made a big mess somewhere, in the kitchen, your room, anywhere, if it was large enough, it almost put you in a space of where you didn't even want to clean it because it just felt like it was too much. You didn't even know where to start at. You don't know if you want to start on that part of the room or this part of the room. You don't know if you want to start in the middle of the spill and push it outward. You don't know if you want to start from the outsides of the spill and push it inward. It's usually that starting process. And for them, they never start. They never start. They'll have a big mess over here. They'll figure out a way to throw a bunch of stuff over it. Say it was some kind of liquid that covered their whole floor. Instead of them mopping it and drying it and doing all the things they got to do to get it out the floor, they'll go get blankets, towels, sheets, anything that they can put on to just throw over top of it to mask it so they can put the rest of the furniture or whatever else they have over top of it. Even with the beings who are not harmful to other people, you will see how much they are not growing and how stagnant they are in the positions they are in. And it's not to say like everybody is gonna be a tree. You know what I'm saying? We do got bushes, we do got plants and other things of these sorts. But when you at a space to where you're trying to figure out how to operate in this Western society, which is a cesspool of shit, and then you're also trying to outgrow your environment or the container you're in. So me and my daughter had like a little plant project we kept alive from her school. And the plant did amazing, you know, for what it could grow and do. Like when it was able to live and formulate in the soil that it was in, it did great. But eventually that plant was outgrowing the soil and it needed a new container. When it didn't get a new piece of, like when we didn't add the new soil or get a new container for it, we left no room for it to grow anymore or to expand. So with us having that kind of thing happening where we are removing that stuff away from it, then it killed it. You know, the plant had lived a shorter expectancy of life than what it would have naturally lived if we had did some assisting, you know. If we had added more soil, if we had moved it over to a bigger pot with more soil. There's numerous things we could have done. But back to the people. I've been engaging with some of my people from my past occasionally here and there. And it's like everybody wasn't on the same level, vibration, frequency. But it's like they all stayed where the fuck they was at. And it's just so weird to me to kind of like see people 10 years ago to now. I'm in a different space and place than I was 10 years ago. So it's weird seeing other beings who have not grown themselves out of that space, you know. And then once I start getting to a deeper understanding, I realize that they are not growing. You know, they have reached their max potential as far as knowledge-wise. And most of us, as we get older, you know, we reach our potentials physical body-wise, you know. And they just kind of stunt their growth. There's no more. There's very subtle changes you'll see happen with a lot of beings from your past that wasn't moving in God's light or with the Creator, you know. You'll see different things like, oh, somebody got a new job, or, you know, somebody got a new car, somebody got a new house. You know what I'm saying? You'll see these physical representations of the easy money flow. We all understand how easy it is to make money, even if you don't have a lot. It's because you just don't want to do a bunch of weird shit to make a lot of money fast. So that's how a lot of us operate that's moving in God's light. You know, we take that hard struggle opposed from taking that unworthy dollar. And I say that because we had enough experiences of taking that unworthy dollar and it was not worth it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like you finding a whole wad of cash, like 20K, 50K down on the ground. Most of us is gonna want to keep it. But you have to understand, like, how have you been living your life before you actually accept that cash? And I say accept it because the universe sends us whatever we need. So if you have been a righteous being moving in God's light, and you haven't been doing any witchy stuff to people, and you haven't been infecting your environments you've been in, you have been actually helping heal and grow the environments, then if you find a 20,000, 50,000 watt of cash, then it's not saying that that cash was lost. That could have been the Creator leaving that for you because the Creator knew you was walking through that path. But then some people who don't know how to dive that deep would take that concept and taint it and be like, oh, well, it was here for me to find, so I'm gonna keep it, even though they've been living demonic and they just hurt some other people earlier that day. Once we able to start diving deeper into things and understanding, like, the people who hang on surface level, they have to stay where they are at, you know, because when you want to go into the deeper water, say you want to fish, you're going to go into where it's deeper at to fish. You're not going to stay at the shallow side of the beach. Most people aren't standing at the shore side beaching, fishing. They're standing at the shore side, you know, swimming, doing things that shallow people do. You know, when you're in those shallow levels, you're jumping waves, you're doing all the little things that you can do in the shallow. But once you get deeper, you have to be a little bit more in tune with the dangers that's around you when you start getting deeper in the ocean. And yes, you do when you're in the shallow end, but we already know, like, most of the animals out in the ocean are not coming to the shore. They'll get close, you know what I'm saying, but it's very rare. On 80%, you know, on 100%, we take 80% of them is not coming to shore. 20, you might get a 20, 15% that bump around because they're in the water, but just speaking as far as like literally, you know what I mean? So everybody cannot swim. Everybody cannot swim. So when I go to the pool with my daughter, she's learning how to swim, but she still cannot go over into 6 feet, 7 feet. You know, I'm with her in the 5 feet. She can dance around in the 4 feet. But if I go over into them deeper ends, she's not going to understand how I'm managing to swim, to float, to stroke, to do all of these things. Flip that into the spiritual realm without the swimming. You have way more depth than these beings could ever have. And you had it even when you was around them in the past. You just wasn't really sure of your levels. So once you start becoming more aware of your levels and then you go back to a space, then you understand, okay, now I see why I was at that level with them, but I still had a higher understanding of what was actually going on. Now I see why I was able to operate with them and around them, and I still wasn't getting too tainted by, you know, the environment and their actions. I was more aware of what was happening, you know. So a lot of these beings don't change, you know. A lot of them don't shift. A lot of them do not grow. When I say a lot, I'm meaning most of them. I don't care if you're going from your mama to your siblings, to your grandmother, you know what I mean, to your cousins, to your spouse, your associates, whoever you was dealing with that was using them playbooks, it's methods that you have to take in order to get out of that playbook. And the ones that aren't taking the methods to come over here, they're still in this playbook. They're just figuring out different ways to mask and hide, so that way they can